Hey guys, I'm Eugene Cisco, and you are looking in on Life and Law. But we're at a regular time on Tuesday night. I am waiting for Anna, my daughter. I'm an attorney, so by the way, and you can ask me anything. We're going to try to stay on, if you look at the title, we're going to try to stay on the Second Amendment. There's a case in Michigan with a mother and a father that's being prosecuted because their son went out and mass shooting. Sorry, let's see if you can sentence here a little better. A mass shooting in Michigan, and want to try to talk about that and the prosecutor and some interesting things about this case that I think you ought to be afraid of right now. What we're talking about today is the Second Amendment, the Crumbley case, which is out of Oxford, Michigan. Apparently, it's a little township. I can't remember the name of the county, but
it's outside Detroit.
Yeah, it's outside of Detroit. It's I can't remember the name of the dadgum county. I looked at it a little earlier today, but I've been reading so much. I actually watched court TV. I've watched probably 2/3 of the trial, and it's an unforeseen, or it's an unfortunate accident. But I want to talk a little bit about the issues here, so you all can jump on. If you haven't paid attention to this case, guys, I promise you, if you don't have to be a gun enthusiast, but if you are a free-thinking, freedom-loving American, you need to be aware of this case because it is unlike any other case ever brought by a prosecutor in the history of our country. Well, this kid, at the time, he was 15 years old. I think his name was Ethan Crumbley. That's Crumbley. Had taken one of his mother and father's guns and went to school and killed 4 people and I think injured 7 more. This prosecutor charged the mother and father with involuntary manslaughter. Now, that's not an intentional crime. It just means that the prosecutor's trying to lay out the case that these parents were grossly negligent and that they should have foreseen what their 15-year-old kid was going to do. So now let's talk about it. Anybody out there, we've got people coming in and out. Anybody out there know why this case should make you nervous? There's a lot of reasons why this case should make you nervous. So they charged these parents with involuntary manslaughter. 4 counts. This case, the kid, they charged him as an adult. They were getting ready to try him as an adult. The court allowed that this 15-year-old be tried as an adult. So which means, under the law, he's an adult. Under the law, the state of Michigan, this kid is an adult. Was an adult at the time he committed these murders. And the prosecutor, who already secured a guilty plea from this adult child, so they already found the person that's responsible. Now they want to go after the parent. So the prosecutor's talking out both sides of his mouth. In one breath, the prosecutor is claiming that this kid should stand as an adult. In fact, I think they actually pled guilty. I think he's serving life in prison as an adult. So now they want to find other people to blame. It's bad either way to have the parents responsible for this kid, even if, I'm not even going to talk about the gun being secured or not, because that's a red herring. Sure, the gun should have been secured. Who knows that it wasn't? I haven't listened to the testimony to know. The kid may have had a password, may have found the password, may have found a key. A kid at 15 years old can do a lot of things that parents don't know about. If you've had kids, if you've ever had kids, you know.
Little Mama said because it's election time.
Yeah, I think it's an election issue, but moreover, I believe the anti-gun lobby. I don't have any facts on this, but I do believe as emotionally charged as the gun issue is, anytime a school is shot up, then they're always looking for a way, the anti-gun lobby is always looking for a way to try to take the guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens.
And JoJo said this could happen to anyone. That's what people don't realize.
Exactly, and it could. So why this is scary is that once we allow a prosecutor to use this theory in this case, then it can be transferred. Other prosecutors in other states will take this same approach. And what it will do is it will drive well-meaning, law-abiding citizens, keep them from exercising their Second Amendment right to bear arms.
Greta said, don't have one of those things in your house so you don't have to worry about it.
Well, but that's not the point. The point is you're allowed to. Under the Constitution, you are absolutely allowed to. And
she said, statistics proven people own these guns, have them used on themselves by the bad people.
Exactly. So what does that mean?
Diego says hi.
What does that mean? So you have a gun to protect yourself and somebody gets in and the bad person uses it on? How many times, I don't have the data to show, but I do know weapons are used more often to protect people than they are used against people that own them. So, but that's, again, those are red herrings. The Second Amendment to our Constitution allows every citizen to keep and bear arms. Now, so getting back to the point, once we allow a prosecutor to use this theory whenever something really bad happens in relation to a kid, then you open the door for other bad things that happen where a young person, and in this case, again, I want to remind you, the court adjudicated this kid as an adult. So it's just like an adult going into your house, stealing a weapon, taking that weapon, and then shooting somebody. It is exactly what it is. Because the kid at his sentencing, and he told the investigators that his mother and father knew nothing about what he was doing. There was testimony today that nobody knew. It is unquestioned that nobody knew that kid had a weapon in his backpack. In fact, let me throw this on you. The principal or the vice principal, they called him the dean of the campus, picked up that backpack. He noted that the backpack was heavy. There was some banter between him and the kid. He actually said, "This is heavy. You work out with this?" Or some kind of remark that knew that kid had something heavy, yet he did not look in it. And this is even after they called the parents in that day because the school on that day was concerned about this kid's mental health on that day. So knowing all of that, that principal did not think to look inside that kid's bag. So in this case, a lot of people are pointing fingers, and I think the school is trying to find a scapegoat. So the school's not looking at themselves to see where they failed. So the testimony showed this: that kid had zero disciplinary sanctions. 0 times had those parents, the Crumbleys, been called to the school about their son Ethan. 0 times. All records that kid had pursuant to that school were all good. There were no negative comments. So why is the school now all of a sudden trying to blame the parents? We all know why. They don't want to get their hiney sued by the 4 students who are not breathing anymore and those 7 other ones that are injured. They don't want their rear end sued, so they're trying to close ranks, cover themselves, and they found a prosecutor willing to charge these parents and send a message to every other gun owner in the state of Michigan. And you can bet your bottom dollar that approach will be applied in every state where there's a prosecutor that either wants to get some limelight or doesn't like weapons. So, and it was really shocking to look at the testimony and how the media is treating these people. If you watch court TV, I encourage you to take a dip into that. look at that case, and you just see how weird it is. Every time they flash to the witness stand and they're talking about a witness, they have it's in the upper left-hand corner of your television, you'll see the booking photos of these individuals. They don't have their regular everyday photos. They've got booking photos, and they don't look good. So a couple takeaways from my own weird sense of humor. If you ever go to jail, try not to mean mug. Her booking photo looks horrible. His booking photo looks bad. She looks particularly mean. Her head is tilted down.
Ryan said, I watched a testimony all day today. It should be the school's fault. That was creepy testimony today.
It was. Thank you very much. It was so bad. You can tell the prosecutor has nothing. The school officials, there was nothing. Before that day, there was no concern. At least not enough to alert the parents that their son had a mental issue. None. That the day that their son, Ethan, went to that school and shot it up is the only day that those parents were called to the school about mental health issues. Now, we all know why that happened. They had to find a way to blame. They'll blame somebody. The schools are blaming. And the prosecutor is trying to find not just scapegoats, because the prosecutor has his pound of flesh. They were allowed to treat the shooter, Ethan, as an adult. So they got him. He's in jail for the rest of his life. He'll be there. He's not going to get out. So why are they going after those parents? Could be because it's an election. I happen to think it's for a bigger reason. They want to send a message. This is the first time in our nation's history where a parent has been held responsible, criminally responsible, for the actions of their child, a 15-year-old.
What happens if a defendant exercised their Fifth Amendment on pleading innocent or guilty?
If you exercise your Fifth Amendment right, you're not saying anything. You don't say anything. You are assumed you're innocent. You don't have to plead innocent. Under our Constitution, you are assumed innocent. The government, the state, has to prove you're guilty. And in this case, if we look at this case, the prosecution has to prove that those parents were grossly negligent. And not only that they knew or should have known that this was going to happen. The prosecutor is wanting that jury to look at those parents and impose on them something that is impossible to do. For someone to be able to look at a set of facts and be able to predict that X is going to happen because Y happened. And the why is they're trying to claim that the boy was so imbalanced that the parents should have known not to have guns around. That the prosecutor's trying to say that because they had guns, their son was mentally ill, and that they should have known that their son eventually was going to go out and shoot up the school. That's just nuts.
They're trying to use these parents as an example, but the thought that they knew he was going to do.
Right. So the reason that's dangerous is because if they allow this to happen, it'll happen. First off, it'll happen all over the country, but then it opens up the door to a whole bunch of other stuff. Let's just say you have a teenage son or girl, one of your kids, teenagers. Maybe they have a party. Maybe you're gone from your home. They get into the liquor cabinet. They get drunk. They use your car. They get out. They get into a wreck and they kill somebody. So that prosecutor right there in Oxford, Michigan, would be able to then take the case where a kid maybe mows down a few people while they were drunk with their mother and father's liquor, and then prosecute the mother and father for having liquor in their house, which is basically what they're saying. The prosecutor trying to claim that, them parents should be liable because there was a gun in the house and they knew their son was mentally ill. The facts today didn't show any of that. None of that. There was no evidence that those parents knew their son had any mental issues other than the day of the shooting. That's it. The day of the shooting.
Daryl said you cannot predict them every day. They change hourly. Talking about
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It just happens. So that's why this case is really dangerous.
Louise said they're trying to make it the parents' responsibility instead of the school. The school knew more.
There you go. I would say I don't know if they knew more, but they should have. In fact, if you listen to the testimony of the school officials, this was funny, Anna. The defense lawyer said, because the media got hold of things like the kid was looking at, so if you look at the news articles, the kid looked at violent videos on his phone, the teacher said. He was surfing on his phone for ammo. He watched violent videos. So the defense lawyer cross-examined that school personnel, I think it was the dean, and asked him, how common is that? Does that not a cause for disciplinary action that the parents be warned? No. In fact, he said, it's not unusual for kids to look at violent videos. It was a non-issue. It wasn't against the code. The picture that they claim, the media says, oh, he even drew a picture with blood on it. He says, kids draw pictures of guns all the time there. The lawyer even asked, do kids show up with their guns during prom? He had to admit that. Yes. Apparently there's pictures all over the place of a kid showing up on prom with their guns. It's a gun culture there. And the principal even said they have to give warnings during gun season. I don't think the principal said. I think one of the commentators said. They're in an area where they have to give a warning. Actually, no, I think that was testimony. They have to give warning to the students not to bring their guns during hunting season. So it is a gun culture. But that doesn't make it bad, because that is our constitutional right to have a firearm. So a couple takeaways from this case, guys, that's not really involved legal stuff at all. So first thing I mentioned was your booking photo. Try to at least have not an unpleasant look on your face when you're booked, because they will, like this prosecutor's doing, will smear that booking photo all over your local press and your regional press and make you look bad. So that's a big thing. And I know it's tough if you ever get booked in, going to jail, and it's not a comfortable situation for you to be in. But try to at least don't look like you want to go out and unalive a bunch of people. Try to look up, if you don't grin, just at least have not a frown on your face. Try to look pleasant, because that's the photo that people are going to see. So the second thing is, and it's kind of dirty what this prosecutor is doing. So the detective testified today. Well, the very first thing they've done all along is show snippets of the mother's social media. Now, it's important to know that the mother and the father are tried separately. His trial is going to be sometime in March. So they severed the cases.
Are they still together?
Yeah, they're still together. They're still married, but they severed their cases. A lot of times you'll see that when there's more than one party involved. Prosecutors will do that for a couple of reasons. Well, if you're a defense lawyer, you want the case severed, because ultimately, sometimes your client almost always will blame one of the other parties involved in the crime if there's more than one. So you don't have to worry about that. But a lot of times prosecutors will do it so that they can kind of test drive their theories. And so they're using their theories and their evidence on the mother. And if there's an acquittal against her, then they'll try him and try to change things, try to get a conviction on the father. So if there's a hung jury, they'll probably change the case and do something different with her. So they severed the cases. So when you look at a lot of the evidence, the initial evidence they did, they talked about, they screenshot Facebook messages, text messages. That's why I talk about people all the time maintaining your Fifth Amendment right. Whenever something bad happens, guys, shut your damn mouth. Shut your mouth. Because a prosecutor will take anything that you say, throw it up on a screen without any kind of context and make you look horrible. And I'll show you a good example of that. They were talking about they read the transcript of the mother and the father being in a witness room with their son. They just read it. The defense lawyer presented the video of that encounter. Well, if you looked at that video, you saw the raw emotion of that mother, where she absolutely appeared to not know why her son did what he did. She was distraught. She looked at me clearly taken by surprise. The father as well. But when that was just read into the record and read to the jury, it looked bad. In fact, the transcript did not say that the father was there. He was there. So, they'll do things like that, and they'll show little snippets of she texted everybody. She was just reaching out for support. She texted her employer. She texted a coworker. And they took snippets of these conversations and made her look horrible. And so the defense lawyer had to come in and clean up on aisle 5 and add some context to those messages. So your social media pages, guys, whenever something bad happens, you should not comment on anything. If you have a car wreck, if you're going through a divorce, if you have a business and you're having a breakup with your partner, don't talk about it on media.
Diego said, he asked, what happens if the jury is hung and the DA office doesn't retry the defendant's case?
Then you're free. Once it's hung, you're free to go. You're free to go. There's probably, and each state is different, there might be a statute of limitations, a period of time at which the state can recharge you or try the case again.
Louise said at the end of the day, I don't think they'll get a conviction. No,
I think today's case, they led with their strong hand. I honestly don't think they're going to get a conviction, because let's not forget, the jurors are people from that community. Even though they may be smarting, even though they may be hurting as a community, some of them are parents. They're looking at that case and they've got to be thinking, I'd be thinking, oh my God, this could happen to me. My kids get out and do things that I don't know about. This could happen to me. So I think those jurors, at least enough of them, more than one, I'm sure, will probably look at this case and say, I just can't hold these parents responsible for what this kid did. And in fact, let's remember, he's not a kid now. The state believes, in fact, they were going to adjudicate him as an adult.
Diego asks, how many times does the defendant get a hung jury?
Well, you get it once. The prosecutor has to decide whether or not they want to retry.
So what happens if they retry and then...
If they retry it and they find them guilty, then you're guilty.
Well, no, what if they get another hung jury?
You're probably, I don't know, each state is different. I would say at the second bite of the apple, you probably can't bring it back anymore. That would just be my thought.
Wasting the state's money, if so.
Yeah, and in this case should have never been brought. Just should have never been brought. But, you have a prosecutor who is either doing it for purely political reasons because he's running for office or because he's an anti-gun nut. And I will say it that way, an anti-gun nut. Even though he's a lawyer and
Louise said, but they think by doing this, parents will now be more proactive.
Oh, no. No. See, that's a good way to look at it. I don't look at it that way. I think by doing this, they will make more parents afraid. And I just think that's the wrong. But you shouldn't try a case to send a message. Just to purely send it. If you're a prosecutor, you should not. It's not your job to be a social warrior. It's not your job. Your job is to look at a case and to see if a reasonable prosecutor would have brought the case. So you got to look at, it's called reasonableness. Every prosecutor is supposed to look at the case in a matter of reason. Does this sound reasonable? Does it pass the smell test? I would argue, and I've prosecuted before, I would have never prosecuted this case. Never. Just because, for the simple fact, you are ultimately not in control of what someone else does. I just think fundamentally that's wrong. And when you go down that road, you open Pandora's box to a whole bunch of evils that I don't think anybody here watching wants any part of.
You have a question. In your experience, what is the best evidence to help you in a traffic citation, like speeding, etc.? He said, again, I'm assuming the name is Dr. Shot, but I really appreciate your videos.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to do a whole series on traffic tickets. I think I might have one or two on there, but I can't remember. But you don't have to prove your innocence. So the thing about traffic tickets is it's just like any other case, a criminal case, because it's a crime. It's a violation of a law. They have to prove that you did it. So this is what you do. In most cases, if you show up at the hearing, the officer won't be there. They just won't be there. Sometimes, it depends on what they use, those guns, if it's a gun, a radar gun, those things have to be calibrated. So there are certain rules that the police officer must follow before those guns, the evidence in those guns are visible. You can claim that you had defective equipment. This is a popular, when I prosecuted and when I've defended many people with traffic tickets, and you go to the prosecutor and you say, hey man, my odometer tore up. First off, you take your car to a garage and you ask them if there's anything on your car that would cause it to run faster or slower. It might cost you a few bucks. Or if you've got a friend, listen, if you've got a friend, let your mechanic know what happened. Sometimes if you change the wheels on your car, it'll cause your car to go faster. Sometimes you just have defective speedometers. So there's something called defective equipment that if you go to the prosecutor and you claim that, sometimes they will get rid of your case. But they have to prove you're guilty. So if it's a gun, the gun could be defective. If a lot of times old school, the officers would do what they call pace you, get behind you and try to guess your speed. That's the worst way in the world. So if you show up, oftentimes the officers don't show up. So the first thing I would do is just show up. And then once you show up, they may offer you a class. If you've not ever had a speeding ticket, they might offer you some kind of class that you can attend, that after you attend it, it will not add any points to your license. So you don't have to prove anything. They are in a position of proving that you did what you did. A lot of times when they pull you over, a lot of people admit, well, I didn't know I was going that fast. They'll ask you why. Usually a police officer will ask you, why were you speeding? Well, if you answer that question, you have just admitted to speeding. So you'll say things like, well, I was in a hurry. I had to go to work. I'm late to pick up my kid. So you've killed yourself. You have admitted that you were speeding. So again, say as little as possible when a cop pulls you over for speeding. Don't admit to anything. If they ask you why you were in a hurry, you just simply say, I didn't know I was in a hurry. I didn't know. Because they have to prove that you were speeding. So I would try that. So my mission is to give you actionable information about everyday stuff, particularly things where you feel like you've been crapped on, either by a landlord, by a boss, by a social worker, by a CPS worker, by your own lawyer, and by the system. If you feel like you've been crapped on by a cop, by the judicial system, generally, that's my area of expertise. If you feel like you've been crapped on, I'm your guy. This is what I say all the time. When life and law collide, And it will. Life and law will collide in your world. What do we do, Anna?
Give you a holler.
Give me a holler. I love that. All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We will see you all later. Thanks again.
Bye.